Ladies and gentlemen, friends, family, good evening. My name is Sidharth Raj, and you can probably guess my parents are traditionally Indian. My nanny was Filipino, though, and our family, we lived in this country called Brunei, which is next to Singapore and Malaysia. And in Brunei, my neighbors were Chinese and Trinidadian, but my community was majority Malay. My best friends were Nigerian and Canadian. My teachers were British, and our family had a Siberian Husky. And I think that he's gone now. We're ready to get a German Shepherd. And you can probably guess, I am what you'd like to call Mr. Worldwide. Ni hao ma, Siru, wo han hao Nina. ¿Cómo estás? Muy bien, gracias. ¿Y tú? ¿Cómo allez-vous? Très bien, merci. Conversations like these were commonplace on my evening walks with my dad. You see, my family and I, we lived on this little street on a tiny area of an even smaller country. I'm talking about a place not even Siri knows about, people. But there was so much diversity there. If anybody entered my neighborhood, they would literally think that they walked into a UN summit. Like, it was insane. Coming to Brunei at the age of 4 months, I was put into international schools where I was exposed to more than 40 cultures on a daily basis. And I came back home to even more diversity. And with all this exposure, I noticed that people are different, right? I think we can all agree on that. You know, you and I, we look different, we think different, our cognitive processes are different, our needs and wants are different, our reactions to different situations in life are different. But despite all these differences, let me tell you what I found out. I found one common element underlying all of us. One, laughter. You see, laughter has no language. You can't translate a laugh, right? I mean, a laughter in India is not any different to a laugh in China. It is not any different to a laugh of someone in a coffee shop in Rhode Island. A laugh is the same. At its core, it is the expression of one's joy. And that's why I look up to comedians like Hassan Minhaj, Russell Peters, Trevor Noah, because they're able to utilize the element of laughter through humor and break down barriers that stood between cultural differences, to provide a platform where you and I can both laugh at our differences. However, since coming to college and getting exposed to this modern Western culture, I came to realize something. You know, poking fun at different cultures, nowadays it's just seen as a threat and an offense to a particular culture, as opposed to an attempt to bring cultures together. But I'm here to tell y'all that that is wrong. That's just not true. In fact, multicultural humor has both a therapeutic and motivating nature that spreads to every corner of this globe. And most importantly, you got to note this, in today's rising age of digital communication, because you can communicate any way you want, but you don't really connect. You have Instagram, you have Snapchat, you have Facebook, but when life really gets tough, most of us in this room have barely a single shoulder to lean on. And so, with that, humor has the potential to provide connection over communication. So, without further ado, let's talk about two things today, people. We're going to talk about the motivational facet and the therapeutic facet of multicultural humor and how I was able to bring this one day to a professional platform in a multinational company. But before we go into that and before I talk about that, I want to really spin the clock back and take you back to where humor was born for me. As a kid, my experimentation with humor unknowingly began with accents. Now, what I'm talking about, people, is when I used to go to parent-teacher evenings with my mom and dad, I would just sit back and I would notice the striking difference between my dad and my teachers, because it was an international school. And I would sit there just making fun of them and doing impersonations of them. But at the time, I never knew that this would evolve into humor, which would influence my life. So it would go a bit like this. I used to have a Scottish teacher. His name was Mr. Bell. And when my dad and mom came, my dad would be here, my mom would be here, and Mr. Bell would look at my daddy and would go, Mr. Rajesh, thanks for coming. Personally, I believe that Sid has a lot of potential to flourish, but he needs a lot of practice, so he's probably going to black out running a 40. And my American physics teacher, Mr. Payne, would go, well, I'm sure he has a lot of ideas, but he needs to translate that onto paper. But Sid, you need to remember that it's not about the grades at the end of the day, bud. It's your passion that counts. It's in here. And my British mathematics teacher would go, Well, it's great that you have a lot of passion, mate, but it needs to show in your grades, innit, bruv? Right? Because you're on track for Oxbridge, aren't you, bruv? And grades are more important than passion, innit? Because you're going to have to get into college. What are you going after? You're going to Brown's University? Yeah, Brown's, is it? Brown. Yeah, Brown's, Americans. Brown's, yeah. Well, you need a good set of grades, Mr. Raj. And my dad will look at all this and go, hey, the fine tuning, I understand. What is this grade you're talking? A, B, or C? And he would go, well, it's a complicated grading process, Mr. Raj. It takes quite a while to explain. I have plenty of time. Please explain this grading process. And conversations like these would go on loop for the whole evening. And I told you, my friends were majority Nigerian, right? So whenever their parents used to talk to me, my dad would literally get freaked out by how similar I sounded to their dad when they talked to me. He would come up to me and go, Chai, Sidhu, is that you? Where have you been, bro? I've not seen you in a while. Oh. Have you been getting fat? Where's your father? How was your father? And when my friends and I came from his house, we used to go to the market. Now, even there, I would find cultural diversity. Like the Chinese local vendors, boy, it was a trip trying to talk to them, but I managed to. And it was these dialects that I would bring into my stand-up. For example, I would go to my local vendor, and I would ask for, dumplings. Whenever you ask for anything in a Chinese local vendor, they go, dumplings? Can. Kolo mi? Can. But if you ask for a can of Coke, oh, you're going to be there all night. Can I get a can of Coke? Can. No can, also can. Can, also can. What do you want? Oh, boy, we're there for hours and hours. And these accents is what I use on my stand-up comedy. And when I became a comedian at the age of like 12 or 13, I started getting recognition locally, like Sid the comedian, Sid the kid, Sid the funny dude. Oh, he's been doing shows since the age of 13, now at the age of 14, right? And when everything was going good, I came across an incident in my life that completely changed the way I looked at humor. It was no longer fun and games for me. In fact, it was a source of motivation to keep my life moving forward. It was prom night at a local high school, and I was invited at the age of 13 to be what they like to call a star performer. And I was naive at the time, so I thought this would be the greatest opportunity for me. So I went. I should have seen it coming. I really should have. I was backstage, and I was ready to kill it. I was going through my lines. My dad was at the back with the tripod, his comedian son coming out. But I didn't know that they called me to bully me. So when I walked out of that stage, they turned up EDM music, and I was greeted by a bunch of people, a group of people, that flung everything from carbonara to hummus at my face. The food didn't hurt, but the insult did a lot. And I remember coming out of that auditorium, wiping my face, and my father looking at me, and he said, no, look at me, look at me. He said, he turned me around, he looked me in the eye, and I'll never forget this to the day I die. It was going to be a father-son moment. He was going to tell me advice that was going to change my life. He was going to tell me advice that was going to sweep me off my feet. He looks at my eye and goes, son, look at me. You forgot your jacket inside. Are you kidding me? Oh, God. I was like, Dad, I can't. That's a $30 jacket I bought at H&M. Go inside, get the jacket. Oh, boy. I went back in there. I took the jacket. I came out. And the next morning, my dad didn't leave me alone. He came at me and he said, so, Sidhu, how was the food yesterday? I said, I would have preferred it on a plate rather than on my face. And my dad looked at me and he said, you're very lucky, I said, why? If it was Indian prawn, then chicken tikka masala in the eye would have killed you. I am serious. I'm serious. It would have killed you, my son. And then he put his hand out to me. He grabbed my arm and he said, congratulations, my son. You hit rock bottom in life. Nowhere to go but up. And, at that moment in time, my mood changed. Through the clouds of despair in my life, a ray of hope just pierced right through. And on my next comedy shows, I would talk about how my dad would react in his Indian ethnical way to my struggles in life. And I would get more laughs from the audience. And with each laugh that I received, I would keep motivated, to keep going. To one point in my life, any struggle that I came across, I knew it was just comedy for a future date. With each joke that I wrote down on my A3 pad, I reshaped my experiences. I tapped into unseen internal forces and really unleashed them to survive and thrive. I was staring down the barrel of a gun. This was the key insight that I needed. Experience, confront, Laugh about it, people. It sounds like therapy. If comedy had this power in my life, could it perhaps do the same for others, like you guys? Well, I started experimenting. It was at a local hospital in Brunei, and I was doing an attachment because I was going to be a doctor. So I did an attachment at the oncology department. Now, for those of you who don't know what the oncology department is in this room, it's a department in the hospital that deals with cancer patients. And every day for that attachment, every single day for 2 months, I came across 30 cancer patients. And some of them were admitted to that hospital for more than 4 years. You can probably guess why. Their families didn't even want them back, wouldn't respond to any calls. They were a burden to them. And the only connection that these souls had with another human being was the doctors and nurses. Doctor, how's my blood test result? Doctor, how's my blood sugar? Doctor, when's the next chemo? And they would always be hit with the same response. We're praying for you. Really, really keep up the good work. We're trying. They're coming in soon. Please hold on. Stay strong. Ugh. And I remember that it all changed one day when I came across patient 23. Now, he's not special, right? He doesn't have superpowers or anything, but the kid was around my age. He was a high school senior. And I remember he had his bed here, and he was lying down. He was watching Gordon Ramsay's Hell's Kitchen insult compilations, as you do when you're going through treatment, right? And he puts it on, and I knew it was Gordon because I could hear, "It's raw," through the mic, so I knew it. So I was just holding on to the bar at the front, and I told him, "Listen, doctor's coming in. He's got your blood test results. Do you want to check it out?" And he just sat there. I'll never forget this. And the kid just sat there, took off his headset, looked at me, shook his head, and just went looking back at his tablet again. He gave up with any connection with another human being again because he knew that it would end nowhere. It was like nothing in this world would provide therapy for that kid ever again. So I started switching things up a little. You know what? I took the headsets off and I said, "You know what? Your blood test results came in, bruv. Your blood is low on salt and sugar. It's raw, right? How dare you come to our clinic and serve us blood like that? You're an idiot sandwich." And I remember him sitting there just looking at me for a good 2 seconds and just bursting out laughing. And according to most of the people there at the ward, this was the first time that he laughed in a couple of months. So ever since then, I made it a duty to spend a couple of minutes with each patient every single day over a packet of tea that I stole from home. And I would talk to them about them, not about their treatment, not about their chemo, not about their blood samples. I'm going to talk about them. The coolest pranks they pulled off in college, the first time they asked their crush out, the funniest, most embarrassing experiences in their life. I talked about that. And no topic was too taboo to be off the table with Tea Time with Sid. And the end result of Tea Time with Sid, I left that hospital every single day for those 2 months, leaving behind me 30 smiling faces, 30 warm hearts, and what lied ahead of me was one Indian mom going, "Where is all the tea packet gone?" And these one-to-one conversations with people, they were effective. In fact, they went better than I expected. But I kept thinking, why can't I use this for a wider range of audience members? So then, I was called in a couple of months afterwards, if you spin the clock forward, to a girls' orphanage in India, in southern India. Now, these girls were subject to domestic violence in their homes. Very, very rough backgrounds. And I was called in to do a motivational speech. I then realized maybe I should try out humor. Maybe I should try plugging in humor, test out the power of humor there. Maybe I could try to pull off what I did back in the hospital. But then I was met with a lot of resistance. I expected it. People told me that an orphanage is not a place to be joking around, Sidhu. You can't say that, Sidhu. That it just wouldn't work, is what my dad told me. So I went in, I walked into the orphanage. I addressed the kids very politely, a little patriotically. And I tried to tiptoe around any subject that made them uncomfortable. And I took responses of their response levels. lukewarm. Half of them were paying attention. I switched it up. I started adding a little bit of comedy into it, slipping that into my motivational talking, and the difference was striking. People were raising their hands more. Children were laughing more at trivial jokes. The kids were more engaged into the crucial advice that I was trying to give them. Spin the clock forward again a couple of months. Where am I now? I'm in a boardroom in a multinational company in front of a load of directors trying to pitch my idea for the SIDS stand-up safety cascade. What is that, you're guessing? They give me technical information that's boring, that people don't want to hear. I blend in stand-up comedy, I do my thing to it, and I spit out this performance that's both informative and entertaining. And the end result of that? Me performing in a town hall in front of 300 professional engineers and being offered a job offshore in the platforms in the training department. And it makes me laugh every single time, because when I think of it, it all started with me making fun of my dad and the teachers at a parent-teacher evening conference. And it came so far as to getting a job in the training department. This just shows one of the vast possibilities that multicultural humor has and its effect on people. Its potential, and I'm serious about this, its potential is limitless. And one day, right, one day I hope, people in this room and people outside this room, everyone in their own unique way can utilize the element of humor through laughter and make this world a better place for those around us. Thank you so much for listening to me.